I want to tell you about the moment a church pew showed me exactly what I was worth to the woman I had loved for 19 years. It started with a seating chart I wasn't supposed to see, and it ended with a silence so complete it felt like the whole house exhaled. But before we get there, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? I read every single one. It was a Saturday in late May, the kind of morning you get maybe twice a year in southern Ontario, where the air smells like cut grass, and the light comes in flat and golden, and everything feels like it's about to be fine. I was standing in our bedroom in Guelph, trying to decide between the charcoal suit and the navy one. My wife Pauline had bought me the navy one for our 15th anniversary. She said it made me look younger. I believed her. The way you believe things you want to be true. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me later. I remember thinking they should have been. Our son-in-law's family had flown in from Edmonton. The church had been booked for 8 months. The florist bill alone was something I'd rather not repeat. My stepdaughter Renee was marrying a man named Scott, and the whole thing was happening at St. Munner, Andrew's Presbyterian on Woolwich Street, the church where I'd been going to the men's breakfast every second Thursday for 11 years. I had walked Renee to her first day of school, Grade 1, Rixon Ridge Public, a Tuesday in September 1997. She was 6 years old, and she held my hand the whole way and didn't let go until we reached the classroom door. I thought about that on the morning of her wedding. I thought about it while I was buttoning my jacket. I heard Pauline on the phone in the hallway. She was keeping her voice low the way she does when she doesn't want me to catch the words. I turned off the tap in the bathroom sink. The pipes knocked once and went quiet. "He can sit with the guests," she said. "Just tell him it's for family. He won't make a scene. You know how he is." A pause. Of course it matters to her. He's her father, Dennis. That's not a conversation we're having today. I stood in the bathroom doorway and looked at myself in the mirror for a long moment, not thinking anything specific, just looking. I dried my hands on the good towel. I walked back to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. Pauline came in 30 seconds later, phone already tucked into her clutch, smile already arranged. "You look handsome," she said. I said thank you. I did mention the call. I wanted to see how far she'd carry it. Let me go back, because this doesn't make sense without the years behind it. I met Pauline Chartrand at a community skating rink in the winter of 1993. She was there with her daughter, who was 2 years old and kept falling on the ice and laughing every time she did. I thought Pauline was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen in a parka. Her husband, her ex-husband I should say, was Denis Lavallee, a man I would come to know the way you know weather patterns. You track them because they affect your life, but you never quite get used to them. Dennis and Pauline had been separated for 8 months. He was in Fort McMurray working the oil patch, sending money when it was convenient, and reasons when it wasn't. Pauline never spoke badly of him in front of Renee. I respected that, but she was clear with me from the beginning. "That chapter is done," she said. "We're starting something new." So I helped start it. I was 41 years old, a pipe fitter with Acon, a man who owned exactly one good suit and a decent truck. I had no children of my own, and no particular plan to get any. But I watched that little girl fall down on the ice and laugh, and something in me just shifted. By 1995, we were married. By 1996, we were living in the house on Waterloo Avenue, a Victorian semi. I'd put the down payment on with 20 years of careful saving. 3 bedrooms, a leaky front porch I rebuilt by hand over 2 summers, a backyard that backed onto a ravine. The title was in my name. My father had told me once, when I was young and not listening properly, "Whatever you build, son, make sure your name is on it." Not out of meanness, just out of sense. I never asked Pauline about the title. She never asked about it either. Dennis showed up the way spring flooding does, irregularly and always with some damage. He'd roll into Guelph from wherever he was working and take Renee to East Side Mario's and buy her whatever she pointed at in the mall. He paid child support maybe 8 months out of 12. I know because I saw the bank statements Pauline left on the kitchen counter. She stopped leaving them out around 2003. I didn't ask why. I drove Renee to hockey practice on Tuesday mornings at the Sleeman Center. I signed the parental consent forms for her school trips to Ottawa and Quebec City. I sat in the Guelph Storm Arena in February with hand warmers in my pockets and watched her play defense for her Bantam team. And I clapped when she made a good hit and said nothing when she didn't. I paid her orthodontist. I co-signed her first lease on a one-bedroom on Edinburgh Road when she was 22 and her credit wasn't built yet. I helped her move into that apartment with a rented van in the rain. When she got into Wilfrid Laurier for kinesiology, Pauline hugged me in the kitchen and said, "This is what real fathers do." I remember the word, real. I should have paid more attention to it. The drive to St. Andrews was quiet. Pauline sat in the passenger seat with a corsage box in her lap and her phone in her hand, the screen angled slightly away from me. I watched the road. We took Gordon Street north to the Stone Road, then along Woolwich toward downtown. The old maples were fully leafed out, that thick June green that makes Guelph look like something from a postcard. Pauline put her phone away somewhere around the farmer's market and looked out the window. "Renee is going to look beautiful," she said. "She will," I agreed. I meant it completely. We arrived 40 minutes early. The church was already half full. The pews smelled like beeswax and old wood, the good, honest smell of a building that's been praying for 150 years. I followed Pauline down the aisle toward the front. A young usher in a rented suit asked who we were there for. "Bride's family," Pauline said. He led us to the left-hand pews, 3 rows from the front. Good seats. The kind you sit in when you're the person it's all for. Then Pauline stalked. She glanced at the program in her hand, then at something on her phone, then at me. "Actually," she said, "could you move back a few rows? I'm saving these for Dennis's side." Renee wanted the immediate family together at the front. She said it the way you'd ask someone to pass the butter. I looked at the pew. I looked at her. "The immediate family," I said. "You understand," she said. "It's just for the ceremony. You know how these things are." I moved back 6 rows and sat on the end of the pew beside a woman I didn't know who turned out to be Scott's great-aunt from Lethbridge. I set my program in my lap. From where I sat, I could see Pauline's hair above the heads of the people in front of her and the side entrance where the wedding party would come through. Dennis arrived 11 minutes before the ceremony started. He was wearing a suit I'd never seen, charcoal with a pocket square, and his hair was cut short the way men cut it when they want to look like they've gotten their life together. He slid into the pew beside Paul Wine. She leaned over. He laughed, a low, easy sound that carried even through the organ prelude. They looked like a couple at ease in a familiar room. The processional started. The flower girl came first, then the bridesmaids, then Renee at the back of the church on Dennis's arm. She was wearing her grandmother's pearl earrings. I had driven her grandmother to the hospital 3 times in the last year of her life. I had been one of the pallbearers. Renee walked past my pew and smiled. Not a big smile. The kind that's already looking somewhere else before it fully lands. Dennis walked her to the altar and gave her away, and the minister said the things ministers say, and I sat 6 rows back holding a program I never opened. After the ceremony, the guests spilled out onto Woolwich Street into the sunshine. I made my way through the crowd to where Pauline and Renee were standing near the church steps with Scott and his parents. A photographer was moving around them in a circle. Dennis was in the frame. I was not. I walked up and put my hand on Renee's shoulder. She turned and smiled, a real smile this time, the one I recognized. "Hi, Dad Raymond," she said. Dad Raymond. 2 words with a door between them. Dennis shook my hand. His grip was confident and practiced, the grip of a man who'd been charming his way through rooms for 30 years. "Good to see you, Ray," he said. "Hell of a thing watching them grow up, isn't it?" I looked at his hand around mine. I thought about Tuesday morning hockey practices in February at 6:30 a.m. I thought about the orthodontist bills and the Edinburgh Road apartment and the rented van in the rain. "Hell of a thing," I said. He laughed. Pauline was already turned away. I drove home alone. The reception was at the Delta Hotel on Stone Road. Pauline had put it on my visa, $4,200 for 120 guests, but I had been moved to a table near the back by the time the seating chart was printed. Table 11, besides Scott's university friends and the great aunt from Lethbridge, who, I'll say this for her, had very good stories about the interior of British Columbia. Pauline texted me at 9 that evening while I was sitting on the back porch. The text said, heading to after party at Dennis's hotel room with Renee. Don't wait up. I read that text 3 times. The ravine behind the house was dark by then, just the sound of the creek and the frogs starting up. I put my phone face down on the arm of the porch chair. I didn't throw it. I didn't go inside and do anything dramatic. I sat there and let the hurt find its proper shape, which took a while, but felt important. The hurt had to be the right size before I could know what to do with it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my side of the bed listening to the ceiling fan. When the sky started going gray around 5:30, I got up and made a pot of coffee and stood at the kitchen counter drinking it because sitting at the table felt wrong. By 7 in the morning, I had decided on 3 things. By 8, I had started on the first. I called my accountant, Warren LeJuke, at his direct line. We'd been working together since 2001, when I started the side business, doing pipework for small commercial projects on evenings and weekends. He answered on the second ring. I explained what I needed. He was quiet for a moment. The business accounts, he said. All of them? Everything with her name on it, I said. And I'll need the full record of the joint expenses for the last 5 years. Everything I can document. This is going to take a few days, Warren said. That's fine, I said. I'm not in a hurry. The second call was to the leasing office of Renee's building on Edinburgh Road. She'd moved out 3 years earlier, but I'd never formally removed myself as the co-signer on the original lease file they still had on record. The woman on the phone seemed confused by this. I explained it clearly. She said she'd update the file. The third call was to a real estate agent named Barbara Kwan, who had sold my neighbor's house 2 years ago in 4 days. I'd kept her card in my desk drawer, the way you keep things you're not sure why you're keeping. She answered immediately. I told her I was thinking of listing the Waterloo Avenue house. How soon? She asked. How soon can you come by? I said. She came the next morning. She walked through every room with a notebook, tapped the walls, checked the windows, stood in the middle of the kitchen for a moment, just feeling the space. The Victorian bones on this are wonderful, she said. You've kept it beautifully. Thank you, I said. I rebuilt the front porch. She looked at me. Is your wife aware we're doing this? She's celebrating, I said. I'll handle my end. Barbara nodded slowly, the way people nod when they understand more than you said. I can list by Thursday. I said Thursday was fine. Pauline came home Sunday evening with a gift bag from the reception and the particular brightness that comes from 2 days of being the center of something. She talked about the speeches and the first dance and how Scott's mother had cried during the father-daughter song. She didn't mention which father. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't notice the files I'd been sorting in the spare room. She didn't notice that the deed to the house was no longer in the filing cabinet in the hallway, because she had never thought much about the filing cabinet in the hallway, because the filing cabinet and everything in it had always been my department. You're quiet, she said on her way to bed. Long weekend, I said. She kissed my cheek and went to sleep. I sat at the kitchen table until midnight going through 23 years of bank statements. The numbers told a story with no ambiguity and no sentiment, just columns. The offer came in 11 days. A young couple, teachers at Upper Grand, first-time buyers pre-approved through RBC. They asked for a long closing, 90 days, which gave me time to find a place. Barbara called me with the number. They've come in 10 below asking, she said. Given the market, I'd say we can hold, but it's a strong offer. I thought about the kitchen table, the chair by the east window where the morning light came in. The chair I'd always chosen without anyone suggesting it. The chair no one had ever offered me officially. The chair they'd moved me away from without asking. Tell them yes, I said. The papers were signed on a Tuesday afternoon at the lawyer's office on Wyndham Street. My hand was steady except on the last page, where it wasn't. I packed the house over 4 nights. Tools from the garage, my father's hunting knife in its leather case, the photograph of my mother at Tobermory that had sat on the mantel for 12 years, my records, my books, the good cast iron pan. I left Pauline's things exactly as she'd arranged them. Every throw pillow, every piece of decorative driftwood she'd bought at the Elora Gorge Craft Fair in 2019. Every framed photo of a family that I understood now had always had an asterisk next to my name. I rented a 2-bedroom on the edge of the Hanlon near Preservation Park, with a covered porch and a view of the tree line. It was quiet in the way that feels like a decision instead of an accident. Pauline found out on a Friday. I know because Barbara texted me at 11:15 that morning. She's at the property with someone. New owners are confused. You may want to have your phone on. I was at the Tim Hortons on Stone Road eating a breakfast sandwich and reading the Guelph Mercury Tribune. I put the phone face down and finished my coffee. 14 missed calls by the time I looked again. I answered the 15th. Her voice came through in pieces, sharp and hot. Raymond, what did you do? Where is my house? What did you do? It was my house, I said. You just lived in it. She said things about lawyers, about everything she'd given, about 19 years. I listened for a while and then I said, you handed me the bill for 19 years. That's a different thing from giving them. She hung up. Renee called 20 minutes later. Her voice was smaller than her mother's, quieter, like she was carrying something she wasn't sure how to set down. Dad Raymond, she said, and then she stopped. Ask your mother, I said, who was 6 rows back at your wedding. Ask her who co-signed your first apartment, who drove your grandmother to the hospital, who paid for braces and hockey fees and tuition supplements and 3 years of car insurance. Then ask yourself where your mother went the night of your wedding and who she went with. Silence. I didn't think you'd actually. That's the problem, I said. Nobody ever did. The line stayed open for a moment. I could hear something in the background, distant and unclear. Then the call ended. The mediation was held at an office on Carden Street, one of those law suites with gray carpet and a table that's trying too hard. Pauline had a family lawyer, a woman named Priya who had clearly done her homework. Renee came with her, eyes forward, Scott's hand not there. And behind them, standing near the door with his arms crossed and his collar open, was Dennis Lavallee, arms folded, comfortable as a man who thinks he's there to watch a sure thing. The mediator was a man in his early 60s, a former Crown attorney named Brian Holloway. He opened the file, read it without rushing, and looked up over his glasses. We're here regarding the property at Waterloo Avenue, he said. Let's keep this civil and factual. Priya began methodically. Common law considerations, unjust enrichment, the length of the cohabitation. I let her go. When Holloway turned to me, I stood up and placed the envelope on the table. It made a flat, certain sound. The property was registered in my name from the date of purchase in 1994, I said. 11 years before the marriage, I made every mortgage payment. I paid every property tax bill. Here is the deed, the mortgage discharge record, the full payment history, and a documented accounting of every dollar I contributed to my stepdaughter's upbringing, education, housing, and medical care over 19 years. I slid the documents toward him. Priya reached for them. Holloway got there first. He read. The room was very quiet. Pauline leaned forward. Money isn't the point, Raymond. It was when it was mine, I said. Holloway looked at the documents for a long time. Then he looked at Pauline, then at Priya. Under Ontario family law, he said carefully, a property owned prior to marriage and registered solely in one spouse's name is not automatically subject to equalization as matrimonial home unless certain conditions apply. Given the registration date and title history, I do not see a basis for a successful challenge to the sale. Dennis stepped forward from the wall. She grew up in that house, he said, gesturing at Renee. That's her family home. I turned to look at him for the first time since we'd sat down. The charcoal suit was gone. Just a man in his 60s who'd shown up to other people's work like it was a ceremony. How many child support payments did you miss between 1995 and 2007? I asked. The easy smile went somewhere. Because I have the documentation, I said. I can see it from here. Renee looked up. Her eyes were wet, but there was something else in them too. Something like recognition. The look of a person who has just been handed a piece of information they should have had for a long time. Holloway closed the file. There is no legal basis to reverse the sale, Ware concluded. Outside, the afternoon was warm and ordinary. I stood on the Carden Street sidewalk and breathed air that felt like mine. The red maples along the street were just starting to turn at the edges. September, the beginning of it, the part where summer decides to stop pretending. Renee came out last. She stopped on the step above me and looked down for a moment. I didn't know about all of it, she said. The money. The actual numbers. Mom never broke it down. I know, I said. I shouldn't have called you Dad Raymond. I've been calling you that since I was a teenager and I never thought about what it meant. I know, I said again. I'm sorry, she said. Not for the house, for the back row. That one went somewhere deep, behind the ribs in the old place. Apologies don't repair things, I said, but they're where repair starts. She nodded. We stood there long enough for a city bus to go by. Then she went back inside, and I walked to my truck. Winter settled into the Hanlon apartment slowly and honestly. The tree line went bare, then brown, then white at the tips. I bought a decent space heater and learned to cook chicken properly without drying it out. Small wins. There's a men's curling league at the Guelph Curling Club on Thursday evenings, and I joined it mostly so I would have somewhere to be. There's a man on my rink named Clifford Wentworth, who is 78 years old, who lost his wife to cancer 4 years ago, and has been making everyone's coffee before the sheet ice is even swept. He has the kind of patience that doesn't announce itself. One Thursday in November, he sat down beside me after the fourth end and looked at me sideways. You got the look, he said. What look is that? Mine who puts something heavy down and doesn't know what to do with his hands next. I laughed. The first real one in a while. The hands figure it out, Clifford said. Give them time. Renee texted me in December. Just one line, can we talk when you're ready? I looked at it for a long time. I thought about the skating rink in 1993 and a 2-year-old who kept falling on the ice and laughing. I thought about grade 1 at Rixon Ridge and the hand that held mine until we reached the classroom door. When you're ready to listen too, I wrote back. We met at a cafe on Wyndham Street in January. Neutral ground. She looked tired and more honest than I'd seen her in years, the way people look when they stop managing the version of themselves they show you. She told me Dennis hadn't called since October. He'd posted photos from the wedding on his Facebook and received a lot of comments, and then, she said, largely returned to Fort McMurray. He came because Mom asked him to, she said. I didn't know she'd asked him to walk me down. I thought he offered. I didn't say anything to that. I was so caught up in the day, she said. I let them organize everything. I should have. She stopped, started again. I should have called you about the seating. Yes, I said. You should have. We finished our coffee. She hugged me on the sidewalk outside. Careful and genuine, the hug of two people learning to stand near each other again without the old architecture around them. It wasn't a neat ending. It was an honest one, which is the better kind. These days I sit on the cupboard porch in the mornings with a thermos and watch the tree line behind the park change color with the season. I've started building Muskoka chairs in the back room. Nothing fancy, cedar and stainless screws, and I give them to people who have porches and nowhere comfortable to sit. It takes about 6 hours for a chair if I'm not rushing. I think sometimes about the chair at the kitchen table on Waterloo Avenue, the one by the east window, the one I always chose, the one nobody gave me and nobody took away until they did. I think about how I used to push it in quietly after meals, making myself small, as if a smaller footprint guaranteed a more permanent place, as if taking up less room meant you'd be asked to leave less easily. I don't push chairs in quietly anymore. Here is what 19 years and one wedding ceremony taught me. Sacrifice without acknowledgement is not love. It's a lease agreement with no copy of the terms. And when someone tells you your family right up until a more convenient version of family walks through the door, trust the action and not the word. If you've ever been moved to the back row of something you built, if you've ever held the flowers while someone else took the photograph, I hope this finds you wherever you're sitting. You don't have to raise your voice to take back what's yours. You don't have to break anything. Sometimes all it takes is stopping. Stopping the payments. Stopping the pretending. Stopping the careful shrinking of yourself to fit into a space that was never honestly yours to begin with. Walking out into the open air is enough. That's the whole of it. That is enough. I used to think patience was the same thing as goodness. That if you showed up long enough, quietly enough, without asking for recognition or keeping score, the people around you would eventually see it, would feel it the way you feel warmth from a radiator, without having to be told it's there. I believed that for 19 years. I believed it while I was driving to 6:30 hockey practices and signing lease agreements and sitting in hospital waiting rooms. I believed it right up until the moment I was asked to move 6 rows back from the life I had built. What I understand now is that patience without discernment isn't a virtue, it's a habit. And habits, if you don't examine them, can carry you for decades in the wrong direction without ever feeling like a mistake. Pauline wasn't a dishonest woman in every way, but she had learned somewhere along the line that my steadiness was something she could organize around rather than honor. That's not entirely her fault. I taught her that. Every time I absorbed something quietly and said nothing, I was teaching everyone in that house that my limits were flexible, that I could be moved and repositioned and thanked later, maybe, or not at all. Renee didn't learn to see me clearly because nobody in her daily life modeled what it looked like to see me clearly. We don't teach children what we say, we teach them what we do. What I had to reckon with, those long nights at the kitchen table on Waterloo Avenue, was that I had confused self-sacrifice with integrity. They're not the same. Integrity means knowing what you're worth and acting accordingly, even when it costs something, even when it's uncomfortable, even when the people across the table are people you love. It means being honest about what's happening, even when honesty disrupts the arrangement everyone has quietly agreed to. What I did for 19 years wasn't wrong, but it was incomplete. I gave without accounting, and then I was surprised when no one kept the account. The clarity that came on that Sunday morning after Pauline's text wasn't anger. Anger is loud and it passes. What I felt was something quieter and more durable. The recognition that I had a choice, and that I had always had one, and that choosing to stay silent was itself a choice, with consequences I had been living inside of for years. Walking to the phone and calling Warren, calling the leasing office, calling Barbara. Those weren't acts of revenge, they were acts of honesty. The first genuinely honest things I had done about my own situation in a very long time. Renee is still figuring out what she's responsible for. That's fair. She was 25 years old and in the middle of her wedding day, and she let her mother make the seating decisions the way she'd been letting her mother make the seating since she was 6. That's something she'll have to work through in her own time, and I can't do it for her. What I can do is stay honest with her now, and not paper over the hard parts the way we papered over them before. I think about Clifford Wentworth sometimes, at his curling club stool with his coffee and his patience that doesn't need an audience. He lost everything that mattered to him, and he still shows up and makes coffee for strangers. There's something in that worth studying, not sainthood, just the daily decision to keep your hands useful and your eyes open and your sense of your own worth intact, regardless of who in the room is choosing to confirm it. The house on Waterloo Avenue is someone else's porch now, someone else's east window, and I am sitting on mine with a thermos and a cedar chair I built myself, and the tree line is doing exactly what it's going to do, regardless of what I think about it. That's enough. That has always been enough.